Hi everybody, this is Blossom, and as we are today talking about the Fae, what they are, how we can define them, how to distinguish the different races, and what Faery Paths are, I thought I could take you on a forest walk with me. Now, let us begin. Fairy contains many things besides elves and fays, and besides dwarves, witches, trolls, giants or dragons. It holds the seas, the sun, the moon, the sky and years, and all things that are in it. Tree and bird, water and stone, wine and bread, and ourselves, mortal men, when we are enchanted. J.R.R. Tolkien on Fairy Stories. This beautiful quote by Tolkien gives you a brief insight into what you are dealing with when entering the world of Fae. It is a vast topic, and therefore I thought I'd start the obvious way by trying to define what these beings actually are. In my house healing report, you will come across a section which is for simplicity's sake called Nature Spirits. And we discussed already in an earlier video what to do if you suspect Fae beings creating mischief in your home. I will link it in the description box. However, when dealing with Fairy, the beings and the realm, there are often misunderstandings and sometimes a little clarification can help. Or not. We are dealing with a Fae nature after all. There are different types of fairies, and you can find many variations of them throughout every single culture in the world. What most people do is listing the beings from Ireland, Scotland, or England, but those are not the only ones. Therefore, I will offer you a list that includes a broader terminology for the different beings you might encounter in the fairy realm. Also, notice I use the term fairies here for visibility's sake. Traditionally, they don't appreciate being called that, and terms like good neighbours, the fair folk, seely wished, and so on are used. Nowadays, they are often referred to as reflected aspects of our personalities or expressions of our psyche. Please know that the fairies are not that. They are independent beings with a purpose of their own. They live their own life. They have an ego and they have their own goals. In the old tales, we often see that their own culture and their traditions are comparable with our own. They even have a hierarchy, which you will soon discover when we address the different types. But it is slightly different from our ideas of kings and queens. It doesn't have that political value as in our world. They are said to be the first spiritual beings in the world, and it doesn't matter if we believe in them or not, they will not cease to exist, even if some fairy stories want us to believe differently. Fairies are shapeshifters, and they may appear to you in many forms, sometimes in a form well known to you, and sometimes in an utterly unexpected form. Fairies are closest to our kin, right after our ancestors, and they are often referred to as our co-walker or cousins. They are the intelligence behind the living force of the planet. They live in a world within our world, yet hidden from our sight. Fairies are with us at any time, at any place. So, let us go into the different types. The Hive Fae, a term used by Robert Kirk and later also used by Orion Foxwood in his book The Fairy Teachings. They are the High Fae, if you like. They have a hierarchy and they are organized within a courtly structure. Yet their titles of kings and queens are not to be confused with our political ideas, as I mentioned already. They are all part of the hive, therefore all their experiences and knowledge are shared between them. If you meet one of them, you will meet all of them. They are very powerful and not to be underestimated. If you come into contact with them, you might experience a buzzing sound or even see a row of tiny light orbs floating in a natural environment. So if you need a visual, you could imagine them like Tolkien's elves, for example. But beware, they are not always what they seem to be. Again, we are dealing with fairy, so expect the unexpected. Generally, I want to say they are friendly towards humans, or at least curious. But again, this is a very broad generalization, and you will also find beings that might not be that friendly. Now, the trooping fae. Another type of fae are the trooping fairies. They can be felt or even seen along the Faery Paths or the ley lines. Perhaps they even use the earth energy lines on their journeys. As with many fae beings, they vary greatly in size, shape and form, and even in their temperament, especially towards us humans. They can either bless or curse us. The trooping fairies are often associated with the fairy raid that you can encounter on the night of Samhain or during the 12th night, depending on your location and your own personal folklore in that area. They are often accompanied by hounds. Those hounds can be black with red eyes or white with red ear tips. There is many a folk story about the fairy raid from different countries and different regions. All in all, it is always better to stay out of their way. That's not to say that there has never been a benefit by engaging with them, but proceed at your own risk. Then we have the solitary fae. Traditionally, the solitary fairies are to be met with caution, or at least a good chunk of them. They have more of a temper, and if you have a fixed image of beautiful Victorian flower fairies in your mind, you might have to brace yourself. Their appearance could frighten you. Some are known to kill and eat humans, like the Kelpie for example, a water horse that is known to lure people towards them, and then as a person is convinced to ride them, they will take you into the water and drown you and then eat you. There are, however, also solitary fairies that can be friendly towards humans. For example, the house fairies like the brownies, or in Germany a Heinzelmännchen. The best advice is not to seek them out. And if one would approach you for whatever reason, you can always directly ask what they want. Fairies are always honest, yet they are also known to play with words, so listen carefully and read between the lines. If you ever find yourself in a natural environment and you sense a strong feeling of being unwelcome, trust your gut. This might be a fairy showing you clearly that you are crossing a boundary. Many of the fairies are very private beings and do not wish for any intruders, so always be respectful. Let's move on to the nature spirits. We have discussed some of these beings already in a previous video about the beings in and around your home. I will also link this video below. Nature spirits are the guardians of a place, like the genius Loki or the guardian of the land. They can also be local spirits like river spirits, spirits of stone and rock formations, or tree spirits that attach to either one tree or overlook several of them. They are wonderful beings to connect with as long as you are respectful. When you begin working with fairy, they can be a great entry point as they can help you to connect deeper with the land. They know all the history of a place, an area, and root networks allow to spread out even further. At sacred sites you can either connect with the genius Loki, but you can also try to connect with other beings that dwell there. Nature spirits do not wander. They remain within their area, so they can't move around freely like other types of fae. You can even encounter them in your own garden, or invite them in to help you tend to your plants and trees. Another type of fae are the house fairies. The house fairies or domesticated ones are generally the friendliest towards humans. As we discussed already in a previous video, they sometimes can create a bit of mischief if you don't pay attention to them, and things might start to disappear in your home, or you even experience some poltergeist activity. However, they usually don't want to harm you. The best you can do is to acknowledge them by leaving offerings. Traditionally, it is said to either leave these offerings under the stairs or at the hearth. Maybe you even have a small fairy altar where you can leave it. In our modern days, you can also just leave the offerings in the kitchen. They usually don't move house, but if you desire so, you can ask them to accompany you into a new home. This move should then not cross hemispheres though. There are many different house spirits, and some might even dwell in a statue or figurine. They will protect the home and the family from any intrusions. They are very devoted to their task, so, as always, treat them with respect. Now let's move on to the elementals, and many do know them and work with them, or next to the nature spirits that can also be a very good entry point to work with fairies. Elementals are, however, in the traditional sense, not fairies, but they dwell in the fairy realm. Most know them by the name of the gnomes, the sylphs, the salamanders and the undines. They also sometimes find their way into your home, but then please guide them outside again and pay attention to their messages as they try to get your attention to something that is going on outside. The elementals are not 100% pure in their element, but also contain other elements. It is said that they are only pure when created by a magician, a sorcerer, a conjurer, and so on, or if found in very deep places of the underworld. We humans interact much more with the effect of these beings rather than the beings themselves. So the sylphs can be found in high places, in tornadoes, a light summer breeze. They are associated with motion, air, breath, the life force, and the opening and entering through the crossroads. Salamanders can be found in the deserts, in or near volcanoes. When there is lightning, they also travel electrical currents and sometimes ley lines. They are associated with warmth, illumination, and invigoration. The undines are found in rivers, oceans, creeks, wells, and springs. They are associated with patterns like the ripple effect, depth, harmony, emotions, the workings of the soul. Gnomes are found in the mountains, in mounds, near stones, in rock formations, in graveyards, and in the woods. They are associated with crystallization, decay, regeneration, and embodiment. So that's the way how you can work with them. Often when we think of elementals, we might have a cute vision of them and therefore lessen them somehow. But the elementals are profoundly powerful. Sylphs and salamander can be playful, but also dangerous. The undines will touch upon your emotions and lay them bare, whereas the gnomes might come across more somber, yet with great knowledge about the physical life and its workings. Now, another point in my house healing report that I address are the Faery Paths. There are different ideas and definitions of Faery Paths out there, similar like the ley lines, right? They are also called the secret paths or the hidden paths. They are said to connect the fairy places or the fairy forts. Fairy thorns, such as hawthorn, were used as markers along these invisible routes in the physical world we know. However, fairy paths were also known to begin in the other world, emerge in our world, only to disappear again into the other world. Fairy paths are vitally important for us. They feed us with the life force of the inner world. An experience from our surface world is taken inward. They are still open today, and we can help to re-energize them. As we have seen before, these paths are used by the trooping fairies. If you go deeper into folklore, it is not always clear if these paths are straight or crooked, but most evidence of them, although sparse ones, leads them to being straight, at least for the different sections of the path. You can work with these paths to build and deepen your relationship with the land and the Fae. It was considered bad luck to build on a fairy path, and precautions needed to be taken, otherwise you could experience poltergeist activity, misfortune, and illness, and maybe sometimes even death. First, you needed to warn the fairies of your intention to build on that spot. Before building a house, 4 stones were placed into the corners of the intended building. A smaller stone was then placed on top of every one of these and left overnight. If they were still in place in the morning, then work could proceed, but if any had been knocked down, then the fairies objected and another spot needed to be found. Of course, there were also other methods used back in the day. Now, this is of course not done today anymore. If you build a house, or you might not be aware if you buy a house that might be standing on a fairy path, then you definitely have to address that issue and work with them or contact somebody who has experience with that. So if you were unlucky to live in a house that was built on such a path, you were advised to leave the front door and the back door open overnight so the fairies could pass through at night. However, that also doesn't seem sensible in our days anymore. Fairies and their realm will always remain a fascinating topic, and certainly not only for me. I hope this brief overview of the races could offer you a better understanding of them, at least get you started. If you want to learn more about the Fae and how you can work with them, you can go to my free fairy course. I will link it below in the description box, and you can also find the accompanying videos here on YouTube. Just go to my playlist of the free fairy course. But those are only the videos, and the main body of that work is in the text. Working through that course, it can take you several months, even longer, so this is not your usual brief summary of 4 or 5 pages. You can have a look, there are no strings attached, it's really for free. And that's it for today. So if you have any questions or if you want to go more in depth with that topic, please let me know. Leave a comment if you like. And if you enjoy this kind of content, remember to give the video a like or subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss anything. Thank you so much for watching. I hope your world is kind. Much love and bye.